I think you and I both know in any room having diverse voices is the best, especially as storytellers when we sit and discuss ideas. The best ideas come out when there are diverse voices collaborating and brainstorming, right? And of course, it's not a personal thought, or I'm not saying this because that's what I want to believe. Multiple studies show that. I think I read a recent McKinsey study which said that having diverse voices in the leadership team has a huge impact on revenue. So this is something that is a universal truth, right? I think it's high time somebody like me is not seen as the extreme corner, right? Like I am honestly somewhere in the middle. I'm not even too radical as a person. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Clearcast. I'm Shioli, your host, and today we have with us Mangala. We met at Meesho, and at the time they were my manager, sort of my manager, also. Yeah. And at the time you were working in employer branding, and now you're working in founder comms, yeah, in Mobi, which is, I think, quite different. Different forms of whatever it comes under in market. Kind of, yeah. So today we're gonna ask you a bunch of questions about your journey, your experience. You've had a really diverse career path. You started off early on as an editor in Microsoft News and a couple of other places, and now you're in Founder Comp managing that in Mobi. So given that, how has a transformation worked for you in your career, and what have you learned in the process? That's a very interesting question. Of course, I think the most obvious answer would be to say that, moving from journalism to corporate communications. Of course, it was a big, scary move, right? I didn't know if I'd be able to do it because the stakes were so different. But ultimately, it's all storytelling, I realized. Whether you're trying to connect with an audience that just wants to know what happened, or you are trying to connect with investors that want to understand what the company they invested in is up to. Yeah, or users who want to understand the product that they're buying. Storytelling is a common factor, and that's what I'm good at. So it didn't ultimately matter, is what I understood. Of course, I learned a lot in during that shift. But if I had to truly talk about a very pivotal shift in the career, I think it would be the one right now, because I have this immense privilege, right, of working with global thought leaders. I think these are some of the deepest thinkers I've met. The fact that I get to sit with them and co-create what they want to put out in the world is because I think the kind of access that I get is something people go take master classes for. Yeah. Along the way, what I've learned about myself is that this is a truly ambiguous state of being, because I'll be working on something very intensely for 6 days, and then I'll learn that the narrative has changed, or something has completely transformed about what I've been working on, and on 7th day I'm starting from scratch on something new for something that has to go live on the 8th day. What I've learned about myself is that I thrive in ambiguity. You throw me in the abyss, give me a problem to solve, throw hurdles at me, and I've solved the problem. Because I used to think of myself as somebody who's like very systematic. I need like targets, I need a roadmap. Turns out I don't need those things. Okay. So that's been the biggest personal learning in all these diverse jobs, as you put it. Nice. Okay. Moving on, you've been a professional storyteller for over a decade now, like you just mentioned. Diversity of your job, the roles that you have changed so far, and your responsibilities working with different kinds of people, and now, like you said, working with 4 major thought leaders. In the corporate world, there's always a need for measurable impact as well. Right. So how do you find the balance between being creative and making sure there's always a story still moving the needle for your business? That's a very personal question, because there was a time, to be honest, where I would put creativity above all else. But I do think that chasing only creativity is just a self-serving mission. You'll be stuck in a vacuum with you and your idea, which will never see the light of the day, because ultimately, especially in a corporate setting, nothing can go out into the world until you convince a lot of internal stakeholders that this is the way to go. The way I would approach it, and the way I do approach it right now, is to understand the impact I want to have. So I would start with the metrics. I would start with who's my audience? What should they gain out of this? What am I gaining from them gaining this information? How is it going to benefit my brand on the project? And have the larger understanding of all those things, and then work backwards, right? And then you can be as creative as you want with your idea. Actually, there's a very interesting pop culture thing that got me thinking about this recently. Are you familiar with Dropout TV? They used to be called College Humor.
Yes, I am College Humor.
Yeah. So there, as you know, it's like a skit, improv, a lot of silly people doing silly things sort of thing. And I never used to think about the strategy behind it. I was like, oh yeah, you do funny things and you get views, right? But recently there was this episode of Dropout TV for one of their shows called Game Changers, where three of the comedians were asked, were given $10K each, right? And they were told, the other comedians will come and pitch their ideas, and you invest in each of their ideas depending on so it's like a Shark Tank scenario. And they have to decide which idea can go viral. So it will be turned into a video and then it has to go viral. And I really, they asked a lot of these questions to the people who came and pitched their ideas. And I was like, oh, they're asking a lot of silly questions, but ultimately there's a lot of thought that's going behind the questions as well. To give you an example, there was this one guy who came and said, hey, remember 90s when we were all in school and we take Fevicol and apply it on our hand and peel it? How satisfying was that? Here is my idea to you. I'm gonna get naked, be naked, I'm gonna be in my briefs and waxed my full body. Okay. You're gonna apply Fevicol or glue all over my body and then you're gonna peel it. And that's my idea. How he sold it is, hey, there's a nostalgia element, there is a satisfaction element, and you know what? There's even a sex appeal element where I'm going to be by the yeah. But so they basically peeled the Fevicol off him, and there were a bunch of other ideas as well. I don't remember which one got the most number of views or something, but they did track it, or it's under a paywall, so I don't want to be a mad subscriber and reveal what happens. But basically these kind of thoughts you have, go behind each of these ideas for a channel as silly as Dropout TV. And so honestly, that's how I would approach it as well. And it's given me this newfound understanding of creativity as well, right? Like, creativity is well and good, but unless you know your audience, unless you know what impact you want to create, do you want to convert your audience into your users? Do you want to get them to invest money in you? Do you just want them to apply for jobs in your company? Like, what do you want your audience to do? Understand that and then work backwards and then go crazy with creativity. I'm sure you can sell people on your idea after that. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Yeah, that's my approach. All right, so now we're gonna go back in time and talk about your employer branding. Go back to our origin story as my origin day. Here I started. So at Meesho, where I used to do employer branding. So what is one common mistake that company do when they are talking about future employees or telling their story through employer branding?
Okay, let me ask you a question before I answer this. Okay, you've been on dating apps.
So how do you present yourself? Do you talk about your best qualities, or do you try to cover up what you see as your, maybe your insecurities?
I think a lot of us do cover up a lot of our insecurities. Some people make up things. I don't make up things. But yeah, I think putting my best foot forward, putting the best elements of myself and probably exaggerating it a little bit, which is, I think, something everybody does.
Yeah.
So I'm not guilty for it alone.
I don't know. Sorry, this is not meant to kind of put you on the spot, but I guess I did put you on the spot.
But yeah, that's how I would expect a brand's approach employer branding as well, because the biggest mistake I see companies make is cover up for what they think are their insecurities or showcase themselves as things they are not. For example, I think there's a lot of companies that's calling themselves tech first right now, and I don't know if all of them are, right? Like, I don't think every single company that calls themselves tech first is actually tech first. I've done a little bit of consulting here and there. And when I've spoken to employees of one such companies, engineers who are not known for being the most diplomatic, but like, why would I do that? I will not be an ambassador for lies, or that's how they put living tech first when I'm not. That I'm not. Like, we are not doing anything native. We are building on top of what already exists. I don't think we're doing anything groundbreaking. I don't think we are tech first, and I refuse to say that we are when we are not. And this is an engineering leader in the company. What I would tell my clients as well, right? Like, that's what I would tell all the brands that's trying to do this, that if you try to be fake with your branding, if you're just saying something for the sake of branding and marketing, people will see through you, especially the people internally. And employer branding is as much for the internal folks as it is for the external folks, because they are your brand ambassadors. So if you have other qualities, highlight those. For example, if you are
customer obsessed. Highlight that factor. If you think that you are great at being global, or you have always been hyper local, I'm sure there are different qualities that you can highlight, right? Like focus on that. Like I'm sure there are challenges and problems in every aspect of your identity that can be highlighted and that can be appealing to a unique group of people, a unique group of employees. And I think that's what companies should do.
So, you've shared some really thoughtful posts on your personal platforms about your pronouns, identity, and belonging. So, how do you see those conversations about inclusivity shaping the future of storytelling within corporates or corporations?
I mean, of course, it's very important for me personally. I don't know if it's important in the corporate world. So I'll not speak to that. I'll speak about why I do it. Having my pronouns on my LinkedIn page serve many purposes for me, in fact. Like, one is, of course, I don't want to hide it. Like, I don't want anybody to assume that I'm not non-binary, because that's the general assumption, right? And when I do put my pronouns as they and them, I think it says a lot about who I am without me having to put it in words. It says a lot about what I stand for, what I will not stand for, and what kind of voice I bring to the table. And I think these things are very important for my employers to know, my colleagues to know, and anybody who's interested in working with me in any capacity needs to know, which is why it's there on my LinkedIn, right? Yeah, that's how I would look at it. How it informs the storytelling, I think you and I both know, in any room, having diverse voices is the best, especially as storytellers. When we sit and discuss ideas, the best ideas come out when there are diverse voices collaborating and brainstorming, right? And of course, it's not a personal thought, or I'm not saying this because that's what I want to believe. Multiple studies show that. I think I read a recent McKinsey study which said that having diverse voices in the leadership team has a huge impact on revenue. So this is something that is a universal truth, right? I think it's high time somebody like me is not seen as the extreme corner, right? Like, I am honestly somewhere in the middle. I'm not even too radical as a person, or a political voice, or a social justice voice in any way. Like, I wouldn't even dare to say that. We have so many diverse voices out there, and having those in the rooms where decisions happen, where storytelling happens, where narratives are built, I think is extremely important.
Yeah, I think that is really insightful and really helpful. And I think a lot of companies should really look into who they're hiring, why they're hiring them, what value do they add, of course, but also who they are as people and how do they contribute to your company. Because a lot of hires do miss out on that. So, yeah. So, yes, moving on to some personal rituals that I have seen on your LinkedIn. This is why I put them here. Yeah, so I'm scared. So I loved your idea of the brand journal that you have started on your birthday. It's such a great way to celebrate small wins, right? So how has that simple practice influenced your confidence and your personal voice over time?
It definitely made me more self-assured. I think, growing up, and especially as a young professional, I had a lot of self-doubt, and I came with a lot of insecurities, and whenever something goes wrong, my instinct is to blame myself. Over the years, of course, that has decreased quite a bit, especially after I hit my 30s. It's been very important for me to stand up for what I believe in, be self-assured, have my own back, and things like that. I think a lot of that came from having friends who would always tell, who I could trust to brag to. Right? Because it's a very scary thing to brag to people. You don't know how they take it. If you have like a great group of friends, which of course you are one of them, and I have like many others who I can turn to and be like, hey, I reached this milestone, or like, hey, I hit this weight as in gym, or hey, I got this great compliment from my boss, and to have people be genuinely happy for me, right? And I realized that I shouldn't just rely on external validation for that. I need to see my achievements and validate myself rather than seeking that elsewhere. And that is a very, very empowering thing. When I write on the back book, for example, it doesn't have to be something massive. Like, a recent post was just about cleaning my wardrobe. There was another one I wrote about how somebody was being mean to me, and I stood up for myself. And these are not big accomplishments. Maybe it'll be a blip. Maybe it'll be things I'll forget 2 years down the line. But I want to have this physical record of it, so that on a day where I feel like I am nothing, I can open it and be like, hey, no, remember that day which was so difficult? You just wanted to lie down, but you made yourself clean your wardrobe. That's who you are. And that person is not a loser. And I think Yeah, and I think it's important to tell yourself that, right? Because your friends can tell you infinite times, but I don't know if it's as empowering actually as you telling yourself and believing it.
All right, so moving to the last question. So I think this is something that would help a lot of young professionals who are getting into communication. What is your take on, would you rather be a generalist or would you rather do something vertically focused on, a specific niche?
From our entire conversation, I think it's pretty clear that I'm more of a generalist than somebody who has gone in depth into a particular role. But it has worked out fabulously for me. I have been able to work with different kinds of people. I've been able to understand calls from different angles. I've had the luxury of learning different crafts within the same realm and ecosystem, right? And it's been fabulous for me. There would be people who would like to go very in depth and understand every aspect of a certain role. Like, for example, if you want to approach product marketing, or if you want to do brand marketing, or or social media marketing, whatever it is, like if it is brand building, it would be fabulous to also know every single aspect of it. And when you grow, there is nobody who can challenge you, right? Like, it gotten so good at it. With AI in the picture, I definitely feel that for me, being a generalist has been easier, because I think GPT and a Perplexity can truly teach me everything I need to know before I enter a new role, or if I'm taking on a new project that I've not done before. And of course, my own skills and talent and expertise has to be intertwined. I can't rely on an AI tool to teach me everything. But I think approaching a new project is easier for me because of that. I would assume that there would be a similar benefit for somebody who has gone in depth as well. Honestly, I don't have an answer. I guess I've confused the young professionals further. What I would say is do what makes you happy. For your second role, if you want to just understand what you have done in your first role, even do that. If you feel that you want to learn a completely different craft, do that. Honestly, there is no wrong answer. There are just so many opportunities out there, especially with AI. Honestly, so many new types of roles we've never even heard of are going to open up. Like, I don't see content writer being a skill anymore, right? Like, you have to, I don't know, I would call myself a GPT collaborator. I don't remember the last time I wrote content where GPT has not had any influence, right? There would be, I'd at least show the content to GPT for just a proofreading, right? And so that's the truth, and we should just be ready for that world where this is the case. So I mean, I would just say do what feels right, and more than anything else, just have mentors. Having mentors is so underrated. If you have a senior you like and respect, just try and gain as much wisdom as you can out of them. They know you personally. I can't give you a blanket statement and say that, hey, be a generalist. Do what makes sense for you, for your acumen, for your skill set, for your interest, and have somebody who knows your industry to be a sounding board and give you objective feedback. That's what I would say.
All right, so that was our last question. Thank you so much for joining us for the podcast, Mangala. It was a lovely.
It was fabulous. Chatting with you always is fun. To do it in front of camera was weird, but it was still fun.
Yeah, it was strange. But I think we had a really good session. So thank you so much for coming, and thanks everybody for watching.